I'd like to call this Kettering Board of Education regular session to order. Today is April 16th, 2019. It is 6 p.m. and we are in the recital hall at Kettering Fairmont High School. I wanted to remind everyone that the mission of Kettering City Schools, in partnership with the family and community, is to guarantee a superior educational learning experience for all students by providing a positive and innovative learning environment while responsibly utilizing resources. Item number 1 on the agenda is roll call. Mr. Schlereth, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ambrose.
Here.
Ms. Gilmore.
Yes.
Mrs. Parks.
Here.
Mr. Henderson.
Here.
Mrs. Kane.
Here. Item 2, adoption of the agenda.
I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Parks.
Yes.
Ms. Gilmore.
Yes.
Mr. Ambrose.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Kane.
Yes. Item number 3, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving on to item 4, approval of minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes of the March 26, 2019 regular meeting and the April 2nd, 2019 work session.
Second.
There is a motion and a second, so this is open for discussion. Are there any revisions to the minutes as they were presented or posted? Having none, Mr. Schlereth, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Gilmore.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mr. Ambrose.
Yes.
Mrs. Parks.
Yes.
Mrs. Kane.
Yes. Under item number 5, recognition and reports, I don't see him in the audience. We did have scheduled State Representative Niraj Antani. He is not here, so if he is running late.
Yes.
So hopefully he will be able to join us before our meeting adjourns. Mr. Inskeep.
Yes, ma'am. I was not able to put this recognition on the agenda, but it was purposeful. And so I would like to just take a few minutes, if I could, and do a really brief yet much-deserved presentation. And I want to thank the Board of Education for your support in allowing me to do this, as well as our team. Mr. Lackey, can I see you for just a minute, please? How about that, Ken? Ken doesn't like this, so this is probably why it's fun.
Did we get you?
This is why it's more fun.
It's not a box of chocolates, but if Mr. Lackey could come up here
But
for just a
you'll really
minute,
like
and then
what
I'll
the
show
pizza
it to him,
box
and I
is.
think he'll
Yeah.
like it. But on behalf of the Board of Education, Ken, and for everybody that's here in our video audience as well as the community, we can't say enough to you for just the work you did and the expert just precision for our new auditorium. Not only for the opening, but for our new concert that was in there for the grand opening. And for those of us that were able to, and many of you were, able to see the musical this weekend, it was absolutely fantastic. And as you know, Ken has absorbed a second job during these last few years, and it's just gone fantastic. And I ask him all the time, is it still okay? Is it still okay? And he assures me that it is. But Ken's expertise in so many things in this district have just led to excellence across the board. And I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate it. Now, you're very challenging to buy for. So we got together and we did some things to do this for you. But first of all, as you know, Mr. Lackey is a golfer. So he's getting a Kettering City Schools, great community, and we put on there, getting it done. It's what I do. And then we got him some golf balls, and the golf balls are emblazoned with the logo that's right there on behind. So I thought 3 of them that you could just keep and save, and then 3 that you could play with and enjoy and hit in the water or in the sand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I really appreciate everything. Thank you, Ken. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ken.
Can I say-
And not only was
Yeah.
it the auditorium, but I was at Orchard Park, and that pavement out there, that blacktop was perfect. I did not mess up a tire or anything. There were no holes. It was well marked. Right on.
You're less critical than I am.
Right. Well, and I just wanted to say that if I speak to anybody in the construction industry, which I know quite a few people, they always say, oh, you work with Ken Lackey. He's a great guy to work with, and we know that. So, but I just want to pass that on. Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Great job, Ken. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
That was fun.
He's going to have more fun than we are.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, item number 6, board committee reports. Does anyone?
No, I will have one. Mr. Ambrose and I have a curriculum meeting tomorrow
Tomorrow.
night, so I will have one next
Next,
time,
okay.
not this time.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to briefly touch on, and Ms. Gilmore, if you could accompany me, I didn't know if you wanted to mention anything about Roush Hall of Fame and the night we're going to do that, and did you want to mention the recipients?
Oh, that's a very good idea. Thank you very
Yes, ma'am.
much. Pam Bowser is a recipient. Let me see who else.
Bill Louder.
Bill Louder is a recipient, and Lou Gabb, the 3 recipients, and it will be after our May 21st
Yes, ma'am.
board meeting. We will have it here in the recital hall and out in the lobby. So, excellent candidates, excellent recommendations from all from all of the people who contributed to that. So it was very good.
Great. So
Thank you.
that will be 7 o'clock on May
7 o'clock.
21st.
Yes.
May
Great.
21st, that's right.
Great. Are there any other comments or board committee reports?
Mrs. Kane, this is not a committee report necessarily, but I did want to make an observation that I think it was last week was Volunteer Recognition Week, and I had the occasion to go to Southdale Elementary School where they were recognizing many of the volunteers, and it simply made me recognize and think that this school district operates in large measure because of the number of volunteers that we have, people who give of their time and of their energy to support the district and to support our students. And so for those folks who do that, thank you. We are certainly grateful. I suspect there is an awful lot that our students get to experience that they would miss out on if it wasn't for some of the commitments and sacrifices that our volunteers make. And so, at least on behalf of myself, I'm certainly grateful for all the commitment and sacrifice our volunteers make, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. Item number 7, we do not have any hearing of the public regarding agenda items. Item number 8, information for decision-making. I wanted to notify everyone of our upcoming board meetings. On May 7th, 2019, wow, it's May already, I can't believe it. 6 o'clock, we will have a work session that will be held in the boardroom at the Kettering Board of Education building at Barnes. On May 21st, we just talked about that meeting. That is a regular meeting. It will start at 6 o'clock here in Recital Hall at Kettering Fairmont High School. And then we will have our next meeting on June 4th, 2019 at 6 p.m. It is currently a work session, and it will be held in the boardroom at the Barnes building. Okay. Item number 9, there are no decisions of the board. Item number 10, Human Resource Services Agenda. Is there a motion?
I move that we adopt the Human Resource Services agenda as presented.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Mr. Inskeep.
Yes,
Do you
ma'am.
have
I'd like
anything
to
to add?
ask that the board approve the Human Resource Services agenda as written, please.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, Mr. Schlereth, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mrs. Parks,
Yes.
Mr. Ambrose.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Kane.
Yes. Item number 11, Business Services Agenda.
I move we accept the business services agenda as presented.
Second?
Having a motion and a second, Mr. Inskeep.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to recommend we approve the Business Services agenda as written, please.
Any questions of Mr. Inskeep? Hearing none, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Parks,
Yes.
Mr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Ambrose,
Yes.
Ms. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mrs. Kane.
Yes. Item 12, Office of the Treasurer Agenda.
I move that we approve the Office of the Treasurer agenda as presented.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, Mr. Shaw is not here. Mr. Schlereth, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Nope.
No. Any questions of Jake?
I'd like to make a comment. As usual, these meetings move very quickly when Mr. Schlereth is in charge. And we miss Dan. For Dan's sake, he is, of course, out there working on acquiring the bonds for our next project. So welcome, Jake. Good job as always.
Okay, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Ambrose,
Yes.
Mrs. Parks,
Yes.
Mr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Kane.
Yes. Item 13, Instructional Services Agenda. Is there a motion?
I move we accept the instructional services agenda as presented.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, Mr. Inskeep, anything to add?
Just like to recommend the board approve the recommendation in the instructional services agenda as written, please.
Any questions of Mr. Inskeep?
I do have a question. One of the items on the agenda is the adoption of a resolution by the board relating to the 2019 through 2020 school year, and more specifically, adopting paper testing for all of our third grade students in ELA and mathematics. A couple questions. My first question is, am I right that the way that our third graders currently do it is on computers?
Yes.
And so what's the thought behind moving away from the use of technology to paper?
It's fascinating because we had gone all to technology, and Dan will be able to answer
Looks
that.
like Mr. Von Handorf is making his way to the podium.
It's a great question. It's one that we've been considering. The Senate Bill 216, it is in response to school districts across Ohio that have been advocating for their youngest students who are conducting state tests to be able to take those tests without the added barrier of learning how to use their technology device. And so we met with all the elementary principals. We discussed this topic. They unanimously and emphatically advocated for moving to paper and pencil. The thought process there is that would allow our teachers and staff to focus on teaching kids how to read, how to write, how to construct their responses, without the additional barrier of then typing those into their Chromebooks. And so it's a step where if kids know how to take the tests and they're able to write, which they're most comfortable with, the next step in fourth grade would be to transfer that over into a Chromebook or take those tests online.
Thank you for that, Mr. Von Handorf. I, for one, am a proponent of this. I've been concerned for some time that we lean too heavily on technology, particularly at that early of an age when we're talking about kids who are 8 and 9 years old. They're dealing with a lot. They've got a lot to learn, a lot to process, and then we throw on top of that the use of technology. I, for one, am a little concerned that that can be intimidating and just an awful lot for young minds of that age to deal with. And so I appreciate the explanation.
Anything else for Mr. Von Handorf? No?
Thanks,
Thank
Dan.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Schlereth, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Parks,
Yes.
Mr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Ambrose,
Yes.
Ms. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mrs. Kane.
Yes. Item number 14, we do not have any hearing of the public this evening. Did you have something that you wanted to add?
I just want to make a comment. Mrs. Kane and I met, as all the board members will be meeting, and discussing some curriculum issues. And in thinking about all of this, I think the opportunities that the students in our district have are phenomenal. We are adding more classes as far as career tech. We are adding, the IB is running very, very smoothly, which was something that I was wondering about and got assurances that it was doing very well. We have a lot of classes with a lot of honors classes. We certainly have an excellent, excellent special needs group. And so I really think that we are offering our students a very, very thorough, a very well-rounded education. We have the music, we have, how many kids were involved in that? I mean, there were,
Couple
that
hundred.
stage was full
Hundreds.
of kids. You know, there's music, there's art, there's all kinds of athletics. So it is a very, very excellent, an excellent school system. So that is all I want to say. I was just very impressed with the conversation we had and came away feeling very good about it.
Thank you for sharing that. Anything else before we adjourn? Nope. Item 15, we are adjourned. Okay, we are going to reopen the Kettering Board of Education regular session. Today is April 16th, 2019. State Representative Niraj Antani was walking in as we were adjourning the meeting, so we have reopened the meeting for his consideration.
All right, well, thank you
Welcome.
very much, and I apologize for being late. I was held up in Columbus. I had a meeting and run late, but wanted to come by. As you know, I make my best effort to come update you a few times a year, and I was not able to get to your school board meeting in the latter part of 2018, so I feel very bad about that, so please accept my apologies, but wanted to now. We are back in action in Columbus to give you a little bit of an update of what is going on. I'm going to kind of tell you what we did in the latter part of 2018 and then kind of talk about where we are now and what the next few months look like. So in the latter part of 2018, there were, I believe, two sort of highlights, really three sort of highlights to talk about. Number one, you saw the graduation requirements get extended as far as the sort of relaxation of the graduation requirements as far as the alternative pathways to the graduation requirements, which were extended through the class of 2021, and we're going to talk about that in a second. The other thing, there was Senate Bill 3, which was this omnibus education bill, made a few changes to how OTES is done, Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, as far as not allowing shared attribution into the model for that. And that bill also, did a variety of things, but also significantly basically allowed paper testing within the third grade reading guarantee. So now, where we are now, I think that, obviously, and as we've talked about before, there are a variety of buckets in lawmaking when it comes to education. There is school funding, there is graduation requirements, there is testing, there is OTES, and there are, there's everything else. And so I'm going to get to funding in a second, but want to touch on the rest first. So, we had, before my time, put in place these graduation requirements. We then, before my time, relaxed them with the alternative pathways. That then lapsed, right? You saw one extension of them. That lapsed, and then on the very last day of 2018, we extended them for this cohort, for this year, and then the next year. So there was then a committee put together in regards to a long-term fix for graduation requirements. That committee made a report, and the state school board adopted that on March 12th of this year. The legislature has yet to act on that. There has not been a bill introduced on that, but I foresee that will occur. I think that, everything is probably on the table as far as what those graduation requirements will look like. And then after that, I think will come a assessment schematic, right? So, right now we have end of course exams, we have the ACT, portion, and then there's the work keys and sort of the alternative pathways. So, whether those end of course exams exist or not, whether the ACT path exists or not, I think all depends on what the graduation, scheme looks like. I think it's telling that this committee made a recommendation, and I'm sorry I don't have that recommendation off of me, but that it's been a month since then and nothing has occurred. I think that's probably telling on where people are on that recommendation. But there is a fix. Now my push will be that there should not be a fix on the last day of 2021. which, we tell businesses that we don't want to change the rules of the game on them in tax structure and in regulatory structure, but yet for education, we change the rules of the game, every year. So that's where graduation requirements is. And, I've taken a position, and I don't know how well it's going, quite frankly, but that we shouldn't change the rules of the game every year, that we should have a 5-year moratorium on everything, and we should put you all in a room, every school board member and every superintendent and every school treasurer, and you all should come up with something that every school district in Ohio comes up with 100% consensus, right? And that is what we should operate under. And if there's 100% consensus, if everyone has bought into it, that's now no longer on the legislature, that's on all of us, right? I think the criticism is that there's like one retired teacher in the legislature and we all make education policy, right? So my solution to that is, put it in your hands, right? You all, through your trade associations or what have you, should be at the table. What unfortunately happens is they create these ad hoc committees, right? The governor has them, the legislature has them, the state school board has them, and they pick and choose the friends that will agree with them, right? So they'll say, hey, superintendent of X school district, I'm going to put you on this committee and you're going to, feel good about yourself, but I need you to come up with this proposal that I'm telling you to do. So that just doesn't work. And so we'll see what happens in that space, but that is ongoing. I will say that a lot of the oxygen from that has been taken away, and a lot of oxygen, frankly, of all policymaking and education is taken away because there is so much attention and so much focus on the state takeover law. So House Bill 70 was the Youngstown school plan about, if you have an F-rated district 3 years in a row, the Ohio Department of Education takes you over. The oxygen is being sucked out because, quite frankly, Dayton Public School is 5 months away from being taken over, 5 months and 1 F away. Columbus City Schools is 1 year away, Lorraine, and there are, a variety of different school districts that have been, are close to being taken over. And a lot of the time and, frankly, energy is going. There are now, by my count, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 separate takeover plans. There are 4 separate plans to reform the takeover law. There we go. 4 separate plans to reform the takeover law. 2 in the House, 1 in the Senate, and 1 in the governor's budget. And so, what is going to happen? There are people who want to completely repeal it. There are people who want to reform it. I've got my own ideas. We've all got our own ideas. But that, frankly, is taken. Now, for school districts, that hurts, I think, school districts that aren't close to a takeover, right, or never are close to a takeover because, all of the things that you need done as far as, testing and graduation requirements, certainty, and all of that is not going to get done until we figure out this takeover law issue. So that's that. So now I want to transition over to funding, and then I'm going to wrap, since you all extended this for me. I appreciate it. On the funding, as you know, every 2 years, we undergo this. I call it a 4-quarter basketball game. And there's the governor's as introduced version. There are 2 versions in the House, version 1, version 2, 2 versions in the Senate, version 1, version 2, and then the conference committee report, and then anything the governor vetoes to affect that. So this governor, and our plan is, once we get them, we will send you the spreadsheets, basically listing out what everyone's numbers are. The reason we have not done that is because in the governor's as introduced version, it is exactly what happened on June 30th, 2017. He made no changes. And so he made no changes from the 2017 formula to the 2019 formula. There are 2 representatives, Representative Cupp and Representative Patterson, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, who have come together and are and all of this. Now, frankly, I will tell you, while it sounds good and no district loses money on it, it requires another $2 billion that, frankly, that the state, we will say we don't have. Now, could we cut other places to, fund it to make school funding constitutional? Yes, we could. So that is out there right now. Whether that is the House version or not, I don't know. I should back up and say, sorry, the governor left the foundation formula the same. He added in $350 million for social, emotional support. Now, what that means, to be determined, counselors, site counselors, I think there's a movement amongst the optometrists to get, eye screenings for kids who can't see the board, things like that. So that's there. So that's out there. And then probably in 2 weeks from now, House leadership will unveil their version. And then we really start getting cooking. And that's when, we'll start hitting you through, Dr. Inskeep, the formulas and the spreadsheets and all of that. So, my approach is that for any district, and I know that I have a very small Moraine portion of Kettering School District right now, but, my interest is, number one, you keep everyone whole. You don't want anyone to get cut. We've been, largely successful in the last 2 budgets. Now, there was a school bus, I think, transportation issue in the last budget that everyone got hurt by. But, make sure everyone stays whole, and then, from there, see what we can get. But, as far as, we know everyone talks about the cuts that took place in 2011. The state seems to be in a strong financial position, so I don't foresee, anything dramatic like that. But, now it's all about, maximizing and capitalizing on everything, for the districts that we represent. And so that's where we are. Thanks for extending, and happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
I just have a
Mr.
couple
Antoni?
comments. Representative Antoni, the Academic Distress Council, or the ADC.
Yeah.
Is your feeling that that will more than likely continue? I know
Yeah.
there's been a lot of energy to say it's going away, but
Yeah.
is it more realistic to presume
Yeah.
that will continue for districts that are?
Good question. So 4 different plans. Governor has his 2 versions in the House, 1 version in the Senate. So, the Distress Commission is probably the more proper way of talking about the takeover law. It's hard to predict the future. I think something is going to happen, right? Something is going to happen. House Bill 70, as is current law, is going to change, right? Now, the governor made less changes than I thought he was going to, right? What I thought he was going to do is to give a school district with 2 Fs a path and say that you can go under path 1, which is the Academic Distress Commission, or you can go under path 2, which is this alternative community-supported path that you have to show, you're doing things in the community and creating a pathway, and that you have sort of, validators in the community that are going to hold you accountable, et cetera, et cetera. He did not go as far to that direction. He did a little bit. So there's, sort of an alternative pathway in there. But he actually made it a little bit more tough in the sense of your clock starts ticking on the first F. So, there are things that the state can do after the first F, whereas right now it's only on the third F. So he kind of made the third F easier, right? But he made the first F and the second F tougher, right? And so it's kind of like a wash almost. I mean, again, I don't want to speak for everybody, but my opinion is kind of almost a wash. And so I thought he was going to make the third F easier. Now, frankly, I will tell you, there's 2 theories to lawmaking, right? One is you operate in a vacuum, right? And you say, how is this going to affect all school districts, urban, rural, suburban, for all of eternity? The reality is we don't do this. This is very much the Dayton Public School, right? And the Youngstown and the Lorraine and the Columbus and sort of these 10 school districts, that are sort of in imminent sort of harm of becoming taken over. They're really crafting this law about what is going on today at these, right? So for example, one thing is Dayton Public Schools is making an argument that they just got a new superintendent, which I acknowledge, right? That is for cause for, some, I believe, leeway. But you can't make law just because this happened this year, right? And so, I think, so then in the House, right, there's the caucus of complete repeal, right? There's a movement of moratorium so that we can figure out what we're doing. Okay, maybe. I've taken that position on a couple other things. And then there's a position of, let's change it. Well, we don't really know how they want to change it beyond what the governor proposed. So I think something is going to happen. I don't know that it will be good.
Okay. Another point I want
But
to
it
make.
is taking up a lot of time and energy and expense. And frankly, I'm chewing gum, fitting. I was talking to somebody yesterday about something completely different. And I said, hey, where are we at on this? They said, well, we're just so busy. We were so busy with the transportation budget, and now we're so busy with the operating budget. Maybe when the operating budget gets to the Senate. And I'm like, well, look, in this business, we're elected legislators. You got to learn how to walk and chew gum, right? Yeah, you got to learn how to walk and chew gum. And unfortunately, we don't, right? So there's like one thing going on in education policy, right? In the winter, it was graduation requirements. Okay, crisis averted. Now the crisis, because in September, Dayton Public Schools is going to be taken over by the state. Crisis as far as takeover law, right? June 30th, we'll probably come up with something. And then we're going to go back to a crisis on graduation requirements because 2021 is right around the corner. And that is unfortunately how we do business in Columbus.
Thank you. Appreciate your answer.
Mr. Ambrose, did you have?
I just wanted to say I think
I
it's
do.
exciting, regardless of political affiliation, that Representative Cupp and Patterson, who are on the opposite side of the aisle, are showing what government is supposed to do, which is work together to come up with good solutions.
Sure.
Whether it's approved or not, I've done this long enough, Representative, to know that the end will be somewhere in the middle, if at all.
Right.
But at least they tried. And maybe that's the beginning of that, and I know that's always been important to you as well.
And I will say, just as a comment, I'm fighting on the local government side, right? The schools got cut in 2011, local governments got cut to a higher degree. And, I would like to see them restored because frankly, the state has money. And people are just kind of hands up, not going to happen, right? They might get some money for roads. They might get it for this. Schools, I will say, people are very open right now. They get sticker shock at $2 billion or what have you. But I think that there is, an opening as far as increasing, the foundation formula. Now we've kind of also, for 4 years, there was this TPP reimbursement issue. I think for the most part, for better or for worse, that's kind of been, put to bed. And so I think we're going to move on for that. But I think there is movement. Now, what gets funded and what the formula is, I think is going to be, the timeless discussion. Right. But I do think that as far as putting more money in the foundation formula, that at least the last 4 years and I think beyond will occur.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Ambrose.
That's okay. As a follow-up to Mr. Inskeep's comment regarding Cupp-Patterson legislation that's proposed, can you tell us, based on your experience and time with the state, are both chambers receptive to this at this point?
Yeah.
And if so, are we going to get around this 30-year albatross that the Supreme
Right.
Court laid out, saying it's not working, come up
Right.
with something? It's embarrassing it's taken this
Right.
long.
So I think that people are receptive. I think
That's the best we can get?
I think that the issue is dollars and cents, right? Is can you fund it? Should you fund it over X number of years, right? I mean, do you maybe fund it 75% this year and then 80% next year? And that I think is the question. Now, those of us would make the argument, and it's all a matter of priorities, right? So $400 million surplus. The governor is increasing spending in this budget by $1.15 billion a year. So that's $2.3 billion, $2.8 billion in the rainy day fund. I'm a politician, not a mathematician, but I'm pretty sure that's around $6 to $7 billion, right? There's the money, right? There is the money. Now, the governor wants it for $50 million for children's services and $100 million for water quality and, this line. And so the problem is always priority, right? If we wanted to say, here and now, we're going to fully fund that formula, there is the money. The problem is that all of these other things wouldn't get funded, and we all have to have the political, frankly, maturity, the political ability to stand up and do that, right? But, look, there's only so much money, right? And it's always a matter of priority. So frankly, the money exists to fund the formula. It's just some other programs and everything is great, right? But I suppose I would make the argument that, maybe if we funded our schools, then we wouldn't need more children's service money, right? Because there would be perhaps less kids in children's services, or we wouldn't need more money for this welfare program because, kids would be graduating high school instead of, going on welfare, right, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah, the money exists, right? And I voted against the gas tax increase for the exact reason. There's this $7 billion out here, and we could have funded the roads without raising taxes. Well, now, right, we very well could stand up and fund the formula, but it just takes political will.
Thank you.
I don't envy you, legislators. I, of course, feel that we should get more than we're getting. But I also understand that when you look at the rural school districts and you look at the inner city school districts, you look at all of that, it is very, very difficult, I think, to come up with what is right, what is not just necessarily what is fair, but what is right, what is best for the kids. And as you pointed out, you have with many, and we're finding it here, we're finding more and more need for social service issues. And in some of these cities, it's a tremendous thing. So I understand it. I just wonder sometimes if those legislators that make some of these almost like ridiculous demands, and sometimes they get passed, if they're really understanding all of that, I don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah, fair. Well, and look, none of this is easy, but you're right. We have a duty to get it right. Now, I would say that, there are different issues in different schools, right? No community is the same. No school is the same. I have very strong feelings for, urban school districts and struggling school districts that, the summer slide is a real issue and that, we have to go to year-round school. I have very strong feelings about that. I have very strong feelings about extending the number of days of the school year. Well, that all takes money, right? And so I have very also strong feelings, quite frankly, that, teachers in urban school districts, they're more likely to leave and come teach in Kettering or Centerville, right? And so, urban school districts and some perhaps rural, I think we have pretty good rural districts in our area, but their teachers are incented to leave, right? They're good teachers, and so they have a problem, frankly, of keeping good teachers. Now, though, that prevents a good teacher from coming to Kettering, and so, there is a balance here. But I think that there are issues and there are things that can move the dial that are done. But you're right, it is a balancing act. There is a pot of money, and determining how many, each should get is very important.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I think I took up a whole nother board meeting of you guys, so.
That's okay.
That's okay.
We're glad that,
Yeah, there you go.
we're appreciative that you could join us tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to try this again. We're going to adjourn this meeting the second time. This meeting is now adjourned.